There's something about small-town diners. They hold memories like photographs, worn, warm, and real. The kind of place where the waitress already knows your order, and the morning sunlight always finds the same booth by the window. Rosie's Diner was one of those places. A silver building at the corner of Maple and 3rd, with a neon sign that still buzzed faintly even in daylight. Inside, the smell of coffee mixed with butter and syrup, the scent of ordinary happiness. And sitting by the window, as she always did, was Evelyn Carter, 68 years old, a widow. Her gray curls framed a face that still held kindness in every wrinkle. She came every Tuesday afternoon for tea and lemon pie, her late husband's favorite. To most people, Evelyn wasn't just another customer. She was part of the diner's heartbeat. She'd listen when Rosie, the owner, needed to talk about bills. She'd smile at teenagers rushing out with milkshakes, and she always left a note on her receipt. Be kind. Life's too short for bitterness. That was Evelyn's way. Gentle, forgiving, and full of grace. But grace doesn't protect you from cruelty. And that day, Cruelty was already walking through the diner door. His name was Derek Hollis, 33, a construction worker with a temper as rough as his voice. He'd just lost money in a bar bet, again, and the anger sat heavy in his chest. People knew Derek in town, not for his work, not for his kindness, but for his temper. He was the kind of man who'd bark at a waitress for spilling coffee, or shove a stranger who looked at him wrong. That afternoon, when Derek pushed open the diner door, everyone knew trouble had arrived. He scanned the room, looking for a target, something to crush just to feel tall again. Then he saw her, Evelyn Carter, alone, smiling faintly to herself as she stirred her tea. A cruel grin crossed his face. He walked over, heavy boots thudding against the tile. Derek, mocking, "What's so funny, old lady?" The room fell still. Rosie froze behind the counter. Two college kids looked up mid-bite. Evelyn glanced up, startled, but she didn't show fear. Evelyn, softly, "Oh, nothing, son. Just enjoying my tea." Her tone was kind, too kind, and somehow, that kindness infuriated him even more. "Derek, you people always act like you own the place." No one knew what you people meant. Maybe he didn't either. But before anyone could move, before Rosie could even speak, Derek did the unthinkable. He slapped her, hard. The sound echoed through the diner like a gunshot. A glass rolled off a table and shattered on the floor. Evelyn didn't cry out. She just sat there, her teacup trembling in her hand, eyes wide with disbelief. A red mark spread across her cheek, the only color in a room gone pale with shock. "Rosie, Derek, what's wrong with you?" She rushed forward, her apron brushing against tables. But Derek just sneered, half proud, half drunk on power. "Derek, she was laughing at me." "Rosie, she wasn't laughing at you. You just hide a woman. Are you insane?" Evelyn's lips trembled, but her voice was calm, heartbreakingly calm. "Evelyn, God will deal with you, son." Derek scoffed, muttering something under his breath as he turned away. No one moved to stop him, not yet. The whole diner held its breath, the air thick with something ugly. Shame. Shame for what had happened. Shame for standing still. Evelyn touched her cheek gently, a tear sliding down her face. "And still," she whispered a prayer, "in every town, there comes a day when silence is tested, when good people must decide if kindness alone is enough." And in Rosie's diner, that day had just arrived. Evelyn didn't know it yet, but her quiet act of grace, her refusal to strike back, would awaken something powerful, because justice was already on its way. Walking through that same diner door, a tall man in military uniform stepped in, dust on his boots, a folded cap in his hand. Sergeant Marcus Carter, Evelyn's only son. He had just returned from overseas, home for a short leave after months in deployment. He was tired, but alert, the kind of tired that comes from seeing too much, too young. His eyes found his mother immediately, and the smile on his face vanished the second he saw the red mark on her cheek. "Marcus," quietly, "Mom, what happened?" The diner went dead silent again. No one wanted to speak, but Rosie, her voice trembling, pointed toward Derek, who had already shrunk into a seat at the corner booth, pretending to stir his coffee. That was the moment the world stopped spinning for Derek Hollis, because the man who had just walked in wasn't just Evelyn's son. He was a soldier, trained, disciplined, and far too calm for what he was about to do. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. He simply walked toward Derek, his boots echoing on the tile floor. "Marcus, you hurt my mother." The words hung heavy in the air, simple, dangerous. Derek tried to laugh it off, voice cracking. "Derek, it was a mistake." Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping lower. "Marcus, You don't hit women, and you never touch my mother." There was no violence, no yelling, just presence, the kind that makes everyone sit straighter, breathe quieter. In that moment, Derek realized that true power doesn't come from fists or fear, it comes from restraint. What happened next would echo through the whole town, because Marcus didn't just defend his mother, he changed the way people saw courage. And this was only the beginning. Before we continue, if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, take a second to subscribe. I spent countless hours crafting this one for you, and your support helps keep these real, human stories alive. Now, what happens when justice walks through the door, and the whole town must decide which side they're on? Let's find out. After that slap, Rosie's diner wasn't the same. Not that afternoon. Not for a long time. The walls seemed to hold the sound of it, that sharp crack of cruelty that nobody stopped. People still came in for coffee the next day, but they spoke quieter. Nobody sat at Evelyn's table by the window, and when Derek Hollis passed by on the street, even his drinking buddies crossed to the other side. The town wasn't large, a place where secrets traveled faster than cars. By sundown, everyone had heard what happened. The story changed with every retelling. Some said Derek was drunk, some said Evelyn had said something smart, some just said, "It's not our business." But it was, because when a good woman gets struck in public, and nobody stands up, it becomes everyone's business. Evelyn didn't talk about it much. She came home from the diner quietly that day, holding her cheek, moving slower than usual. Her neighbor, Mrs. Dorsey, noticed her from across the fence. "Mrs. Dorsey, Evelyn, honey, what happened to you?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Evelyn, oh, nothing, just a misunderstanding." But behind her eyes, something flickered, not fear, but sorrow, the kind of sorrow that comes when the world you believed in feels smaller than you thought. That night, Marcus sat across from her at the kitchen table. The old clock ticked between them. He'd made tea, just like she liked it, lemon and honey, but neither of them were drinking. "Marcus, why didn't anyone stop him, Mom?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands. "Evelyn, people are afraid, son, afraid to get involved. It's easier to look away." Marcus clenched his jaw. He'd seen men hurt in war, he'd seen cruelty overseas, but seeing it here, at home, against his own mother, that was something else. He could feel anger rising, that soldier's instinct to act, to defend, to strike back, but his mother's calmness pulled him back. "Evelyn, you don't fight darkness with more darkness, Marcus, you shine light on it." Her voice trembled slightly, but it was steady enough to keep his fury in check. The next morning, Marcus went back to the diner alone. Rosie was wiping the counter when he walked in. She froze, nervous. "Rosie, Marcus, I'm sorry about what happened. I tried to stop him." Marcus nodded slowly. "Marcus, I know you did, but why didn't anyone else?" Rosie looked away. "Rosie, because people don't want trouble. Derek's mean, sure, but he's part of this town. Folks don't want to make enemies." Marcus leaned on the counter. "Marcus, sometimes doing nothing is making enemies." Those words hung heavy. Rosie looked down at her hands. The ring on her finger caught a light, a nervous habit, twisting it round and round. "Rosie, Evelyn said she doesn't want to press charges." Marcus frowned. "Marcus, she said that?" Rosie nodded. "She said she forgave him, said life's too short for bitterness." Marcus exhaled slowly, torn between admiration and frustration. That was his mother, forgiving even the unforgivable. But forgiveness doesn't erase wrong, it exposes it. 2 days later, Derek came back to Rosie's diner, like nothing had happened. He swaggered in with his usual smirk, his hard hat slung over one arm. People fell silent again. Forks froze mid-air. Even the jukebox stopped between songs. Derek sat at the counter, pretending to read a menu. Rosie served him quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she poured his coffee. But this time, there was someone new sitting in the back booth. Marcus, in plain clothes, no uniform, watching, not to intimidate, just to be there, to make sure his mother could walk into her favorite diner again without fear. Derek noticed him. Their eyes met in the reflection of the window, and suddenly, the swagger faded. "Derek, you here to scare me or something?" Marcus didn't answer. He just looked at him. That calm, soldier stare, not violent, not threatening, just steady. And it's strange, but sometimes silence speaks louder than anger. In that silence, Derek saw himself, saw what he'd done. For the first time, shame began to sink in. He left half his breakfast untouched. He didn't come back for a week. But silence alone doesn't fix what's broken. And for Evelyn, the bruise on her cheek faded long before the whispers did. At the grocery store, she could feel eyes following her, not with pity, with guilt. People wanted to say something, but they didn't. That's the strange thing about injustice. It doesn't end when the act is over. It lingers, in the stares, the half-smiles, the words people don't say. Evelyn carried herself with dignity, like she always did, but at night, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, she'd touch her cheek, and sigh, not for herself, but for the town she loved. One evening, Rosie came by with a pie, lemon, of course. Rosie, I've been thinking, Evelyn, maybe we should talk to the sheriff. People saw what happened. Evelyn smiled gently. Evelyn, I know, Rosie, but sometimes the best justice isn't the kind that comes from courts. Rosie, then what kind? Evelyn, the kind that changes hearts. Rosie sighed, frustrated but moved. She'd known Evelyn for years, and somehow, that woman's faith and goodness still humbled her. Meanwhile, Marcus couldn't rest. He couldn't forget Derek's smirk, his mother's silence, or the cowardice of the crowd. He started visiting people around town. The man who'd been sitting 2 booths away, the young couple who'd recorded part of it on their phone but never shared it. He wasn't angry, he just asked questions. Marcus, why didn't you step in? Why didn't you help her? Most people said the same thing. I didn't want to get involved. I didn't know what to do. Excuses, but they weren't evil people. They were ordinary, frightened, human. Marcus started realizing something. Maybe this wasn't just about Derek. Maybe it was about what fear does to good people. And so, instead of planning revenge, Marcus made a decision. He'd show this town what strength really looked like, not through violence, but through honor. He volunteered at the local youth center, teaching self-defense and respect. He began speaking quietly to local kids about courage, not the kind that fights, but the kind that stands up. Evelyn watched from her porch as her son became the quiet guardian of a town that had once looked away. And somewhere, deep down, Derek Hollis started to feel it too. The weight of being the man everyone whispered about. No one wanted to drink with him anymore. His friends stopped calling, and when he passed the diner, he kept his eyes on the ground. Because some punishments don't need bars or judges. Sometimes, shame itself delivers the sentence. Justice doesn't always arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes, it comes in silence, in a mother's forgiveness, in a son's quiet strength, and in a town finally learning that staying silent in the face of cruelty is its own kind of guilt. Sometimes justice doesn't come with a hammer or a headline. Sometimes, it starts with one person deciding they won't stay quiet anymore. It had been 2 weeks since that afternoon at Rosie's diner. The bruise on Evelyn's cheek was gone, but the memory wasn't. Neither was the silence that followed. People whispered still, about the slap, about the soldier son, about how one small moment could divide an entire town between those who acted and those who looked away. Marcus Carter had always believed in 2 kinds of battles, the ones fought with weapons, and the ones fought with conscience. He'd seen both, but here, in his own hometown, it was the second battle that mattered most. He started small. He went back to the diner every morning, not to confront Derek, but to protect his mother's space. Evelyn would sit at her usual spot again, her tea steaming, her eyes calm but watchful, and slowly, the regulars began to return too. The college kids, the mailman, even Mrs. Dorsey, each one taking their usual seats again, as if to say, we're not afraid anymore. Courage, it seemed, could be contagious, but Derek Hollis was unraveling. He'd tried to pretend it didn't matter, the looks, the whispers, the way Rosie no longer smiled when he came in. But guilt is a heavy thing, and when you try to bury it, it just grows roots. His boss at the construction site noticed it too. Derek had been showing up late, working slower, snapping at coworkers for no reason. He wasn't drinking as much, but somehow, that made it worse. He had to sit with himself, sober, and that was something he'd never learned how to do. One afternoon, after another argument with a foreman, Derek found himself sitting alone in his truck, staring at his reflection in the windshield. He saw the same man who'd hired a defenseless widow, the same man who'd been too proud to apologize. He punched the steering wheel, once, twice, then he just sat there, breathing hard, his own anger turning inward. Sometimes the first step toward redemption is realizing you've run out of excuses. Evelyn sat by the window, humming an old gospel tune. Marcus sat across from her, reading the paper. They didn't need to talk much. Their silence was peaceful now, not heavy, but healing. Rosie came over, smiling faintly. Rosie, you two are becoming my favorite morning routine. Evelyn chuckled. Evelyn, well, someone has to keep you company before the rush. Then, from the corner of her eye, Evelyn saw something, A shadow outside the window. A man standing near the curb, head down. Derek. He wasn't coming in, just standing there, watching. Marcus noticed too. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in readiness. Evelyn, quietly, let him be. Marcus, you sure? She nodded. Evelyn, sometimes people have to face their own shame before they can change. Marcus exhaled, relaxing his grip on the coffee cup. That same day, Marcus went to see Sheriff Tomlin, an old friend of his late father's. He wasn't there to press charges, not yet. He was there to ask for something else. Marcus, Sheriff, you've known my family a long time. You know what kind of woman my mother is. The sheriff nodded. Sheriff Tomlin, I do, son. She's one of the best people in this town. Marcus, then help me do right by her, not just legally, but morally. The sheriff leaned back, studying him. Sheriff Tomlin, what do you have in mind? Marcus placed a small folded paper on the desk, a photo from the diner's security camera. It showed Derek standing over Evelyn, the moment before the slap. Marcus, I don't want to destroy him. I just want him to face what he did, not to her, to himself. The sheriff nodded slowly, understanding. Sheriff Tomlin, sometimes shame can teach what punishment can't. 2 days later, the sheriff called a community meeting, an open forum about violence and decency in public spaces. The whole town showed up, even Derek, who thought it was about something else. At first, it was just talk, a few speeches, polite nods, the kind of small-town civility that hides discomfort. Then, the sheriff dimmed the lights, and played the diner footage. The video showed Evelyn sitting quietly, Derek standing. Then, that slap. The sound echoed even through the speakers. No one breathed. Some gasped. Others looked down, ashamed, because they had been there that day. Derek froze, his face drained of color. Sheriff Tomlin, this is what happens when good people stay silent. And this, he pointed to Evelyn's calm expression in the footage. This is what real strength looks like. The room erupted in murmurs. Some people cried. Evelyn sat in the back, her hands clasped, tears in her eyes, not from anger, but from relief. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth finally being seen. Derek stood up slowly, trembling. All eyes turned to him. For a moment, no one knew what he'd do. But then, he did something no one expected. He walked toward Evelyn. Derek, Ms. Carter, I can't take it back. I don't even know why I did it. I was angry at everything, and you didn't deserve that. You were just sitting there. He swallowed hard, his voice cracking under the weight of his own words. Derek, I'm sorry. The crowd was silent. Evelyn looked up, eyes glistening. She rose slowly and placed her hand on his arm. Evelyn, anger is a poison, son. The only way to get rid of it is to stop drinking from it. Her words hit harder than any punishment could. Derek nodded, unable to speak. He turned, and for the first time, his shoulders sagged not from arrogance, but from remorse. That moment changed everything, not just for Derek, for the town, for every person who had been too afraid to act. It was as if the truth had cracked open something bigger, a mirror showing everyone who they really were. The meeting ended with quiet handshakes, apologies, and promises. But for Marcus and Evelyn, it wasn't about closure, it was about peace. As they walked home together that night, the air was cool, stars scattered like confessions across the sky. Evelyn, you see, Marcus, God didn't need our anger, he just needed time. Marcus smiled faintly. Marcus, maybe so, Mom, but I think he used you to remind this town what grace looks like. Evelyn chuckled gently. Evelyn, oh, I just reminded them. You're the one who stood up. They walked in silence for a while, the crunch of gravel underfoot the only sound. For the first time since that awful day, Evelyn's heart felt light again. Do you think justice can ever exist in a world like this, where forgiveness and punishment fight for the same space in a human heart? Comment your honest thought below, because sometimes, the hardest question isn't what justice is, but what it should be. Morning came quietly over Maple Street, but something in the air had changed. It wasn't just the sunlight or the hum of traffic, it was peace, the kind of fragile peace that only comes after truth finally sees the light. But not everyone knew what to do with that truth. The day after the town meeting, people talked of little else. At the diner, the usual chatter was replaced with whispers of guilt and relief. For once, the silence that had protected cruelty had been broken. Rosie wiped the counter and glanced toward the window where Evelyn sat once again. Same table, same tea, same quiet dignity. But this time, she wasn't alone. Derek Hollis was standing outside, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. A man stripped of arrogance. It takes a certain kind of courage to face the person you've wronged, to walk through the same door you once turned into a weapon. And on that morning, Derek finally found that courage. The diner bell chimed. Every head turned. Evelyn looked up, calm, unflinching. Derek took off his cap. His hands trembled slightly as he stepped inside. Rosie froze mid-pour. The same spot where months earlier, a slap had shattered peace, now held its breath again. But this time, there was no tension, only expectation. Derek, Ms. Carter, I wanted to come see you, properly. Evelyn's eyes softened. She nodded once, inviting him to sit. He hesitated, then slid into the booth across from her. Evelyn, would you like some tea? The offer stunned him. He looked down at his hands, calloused and shaking. Derek, I don't deserve that. Evelyn, maybe not, but sometimes grace isn't about what we deserve. The words hung there, gentle, heavy, true. Rosie watched from behind the counter, wiping her eyes. Marcus was there too, not hovering, just sitting nearby, ready if needed. But this wasn't his fight anymore. It was between a wounded soul and the woman he'd wounded. Derek, voice breaking. I keep seeing it, that moment, over and over. I don't even know what made me do it. I was angry at my life, my job, myself, and you were just there. Evelyn studied him, her gaze filled with something deeper than pity, understanding. Evelyn, I've seen a lot of angry men, Derek. My husband was one once, but he learned, before he died, that pain doesn't give you permission to spread it. Derek nodded, tears forming. Derek, I quit my job last week. I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I thought maybe if I just disappeared, people would forget. Evelyn's smile was faint but kind. Evelyn, people forget words, Derek, but they don't forget change. Show them who you can be, not who you were. Outside, the town was waking up. A few people paused as they saw through the diner window Derek sitting across from the woman he'd once hurt. It was a strange sight, but it said more than any sermon or headline ever could. For the first time, Derek wasn't running from what he'd done. He was facing it, with humility. And Evelyn, as always, chose grace over bitterness. But not everyone believed forgiveness was enough. Later that week, Marcus received a call from Sheriff Tomlin. A group of townspeople had come forward. They wanted Derek formally charged for assault. They said it wasn't about vengeance, but doing what's right. Marcus hesitated. His instinct as a soldier told him that accountability mattered. His heart, as a son, wanted peace for his mother. That night, he sat with Evelyn on the porch, watching fireflies drift in the humid air. Marcus, Mom, they want to press charges. Evelyn didn't speak at first. She rocked slowly in her chair, the creak echoing into the night. Evelyn, if it helps them sleep at night, let them. Marcus, what about you? She looked at him, her eyes soft but certain. Evelyn, justice isn't about punishing one man. Marcus, it's about healing what he broke. If his heart's already changing, I'd rather see that than a courtroom sentence. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees, struggling with the weight of it. Marcus, I just don't want people thinking they can do something like that and get away with it. Evelyn, oh, son, nobody gets away with hurting another soul. The world has a way of evening itself out. It just doesn't always happen the way we expect. It was Derek, holding something in his hand, a folded envelope. He stopped at the edge of the porch, uncertain. Derek, ma'am, Sergeant Carter, I'm sorry to bother you. I need to give you this. He handed Marcus the envelope and stepped back. Marcus unfolded it. Inside was a handwritten letter and a check. Derek, it's all I had saved. I can't undo what I did, but I want to pay back what I owe. For the shame, for the pain, for the lesson. Evelyn shook her head gently. Evelyn, Derek, money can't fix hearts, but I'll tell you what, you keep it. Use it to help someone else. Maybe fix that old playground on Elm Street. The children could use something good built by your hands. Derek's lips trembled. He nodded once, tears glistening in his eyes, and walked away into the night. Marcus watched him disappear down the road, his figure swallowed by darkness and streetlight glow. Word spread fast. Within days, Derek Hollis wasn't known as the man who slapped an old widow anymore. He became the man rebuilding the town's playground, using his own hands, his own money, his own repentance. Some people scoffed at it, others quietly helped him, bringing tools or paint, and little by little, that broken playground turned into a place of laughter again. Justice, it seemed, had found a new face, not one of punishment, but restoration. On the opening day of the new playground, Evelyn sat on a bench with Rosie, watching kids run across the fresh wooden bridges. Marcus stood nearby, talking with the sheriff. Derek was there too, covered in paint, hammer still in hand, exhaustion and pride mingling on his face. He approached Evelyn slowly. Derek, it's done. I wanted you to be the first to see. Evelyn smiled warmly. Evelyn, you built something good. Derek, that's how you make peace with the past, one nail at a time. He nodded, eyes glistening. Then Marcus walked over, extending his hand. Marcus, glad to see you finally found a better use for those hands. Derek blinked, surprised, then took the hand firmly. Derek, I'm trying, Sergeant. Marcus, keep trying. The world needs fewer men who hit, and more who build. Their handshake lingered, a silent truce born from pain and humility. As the sun dipped behind the trees, the whole town gathered around, clapping as the children laughed on swings. The same people who had once stayed silent were now standing side by side. It wasn't perfect, it never is, but it was something, a community remembering how to care again. Evelyn leaned on her cane, eyes wet with gratitude. Evelyn, I told you, Marcus, God always sends justice in his own way. He smiled beside her. Marcus, yet, Mom, he just needed a little help from you. That was the day the town of Maple learned what true reckoning meant. Not revenge, not humiliation, but facing the truth, making amends, and learning to be better. Because sometimes, justice doesn't roar, it whispers, through forgiveness, through change, through quiet courage. Weeks passed, the leaves began to change, shades of amber, rust, and gold sweeping through the little town of Maple like a gentle reminder, everything changes, if you give it time. The new playground on Elm Street became a small miracle. Every afternoon, the sound of laughter echoed where silence and decay once lived. Parents watched from benches, their eyes soft, their smiles cautious, as if afraid this new piece might disappear. But it didn't. It stayed. Because this time, it was built on something stronger than wood and nails. It was built on accountability, on forgiveness, on the courage to face one's own reflection. Evelyn Carter still came to Rosie's every morning. Same tea, same seat. Only now, when she looked out that window, she didn't see pain anymore. She saw proof that even the ugliest moments can become soil for something good to grow. Rosie often joined her, pouring tea and shaking her head with a smile. Rosie, never thought I'd see that man smile again. Evie, guess you were right all along. Evelyn chuckled softly. Evelyn, about what? Rosie, about God handling things in his own way. Evelyn looked out toward the street, where Derek now worked fixing a neighbor's porch. He waved awkwardly when he saw her watching. She waved back. Evelyn, quietly, sometimes he just needs us to be part of the plan. As for Marcus, his leave ended, and the day came when he had to return to base. That morning, he stood on the same porch where so many truths had been spoken. Evelyn hugged him tightly, her frail arms still strong in their own way. Evelyn, you go do what you were made to do, Marcus, and remember, strength isn't in the hands, it's in the heart. He smiled, kissed her forehead, and nodded. Marcus, guess I learned that here. Before he left, he stopped by the playground. Derek was there, hammering in a final board near the slide. They didn't need many words, just a quiet exchange of nods. Two men, once divided by anger, now connected by understanding. Marcus turned to go, then paused. Marcus, without looking back, take care of her. Derek, I will, Sergeant, you have my word. And just like that, the soldier drove off into the horizon. Another chapter closed, another kind of peace earned. In the months that followed, Derek kept working, not for recognition, not for praise, but because it felt right. He started volunteering at the local youth center, teaching boys how to build things with their hands instead of breaking things in anger. He didn't talk much about the slap that changed everything, but the town never forgot, because every time someone crossed that playground, they were reminded that change is possible. And Evelyn Carter, the woman who forgave what most couldn't, became the quiet heartbeat of that change. People began to say that sitting near her made you feel calmer. Some said it was her faith, others said it was her eyes, how they seemed to see the good in you before you even earned it. There's a truth we often overlook in stories like this. Justice isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with sirens or shouting or fists. Sometimes, it walks in quietly, wearing forgiveness like armor. It's not weakness. It's the deepest kind of strength, the kind that can stop hate without matching its fire. And that's what Evelyn taught everyone who crossed her path. That day at the diner could have ended in vengeance. Instead, it ended in transformation. Maybe that's the real power of love, not the kind that forgets pain, but the kind that refuses to let pain be the ending. She pauses at the door, turns back toward Rosie with a smile. Evelyn, you know, Rosie, I think I'm finally at peace. Rosie tilts her head. Rosie, took one terrible man to remind the whole town how to be decent again. Guess that's something. Evelyn chuckles softly as she steps outside, cane tapping the pavement, the world around her calm and golden. And so the story of Rosie's diner became more than a memory. It became a lesson, whispered through generations, that power built on fear will always crumble, but power rooted in grace never does, because true strength isn't in striking back, it's in standing tall, even when the world gives you every reason to fall. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it. Every story I tell is built from real pain, real courage, and the hope that justice still matters. Maybe, somewhere out there, another Derek is listening. Maybe another Evelyn is waiting for the world to change. And maybe, through stories like this, it finally will.